We are looking at a not-for-profit organization question right now. I don't think we've looked at any NGO yet, because in the planning chapter, there's the NGO. So I think this first question, this November 2023 question 3, Giant Club tested the NFPOs, not-for-profit organization model or unit in that our question. So let's get back to it, and let's look at how this we'll be able to tackle such an NGO question if it comes and if we choose such question. So question 3 is Giant Club, and the question reads, Giant Club has been in existence for about 6 years. The club membership comprises of eminent individuals in the society and has a certificate of registration under the relevant laws. It has an appropriate enrollment of 1,000 members. The club's funding is supported by membership fees, parking fees, rental fees, voluntary donations, and income from endowment investments. The club has been named as a beneficiary under the wills of 2 deceased members. Collection on the proceeds of the estate is made subsequent to the balance sheet date. Collections from the will receivable in the amount of 6.2 million, which has been recorded based on the available information from the estate administrators. During 2020 financial year, the club was committed to giving scholarship to 7 students in various higher institutions. Accordingly, the club has agreed to pay these individuals a regular pocket money in addition to providing medical coverage as the need arises. Since it's a not-for-profit organization, the club has not been conducting an independent statutory audit of the financial statements since inception. However, the club has been appointing her officers as at when due every 2 years. The new treasurer, who is a professional accountant, took over the control of the revealed treasury, and his review revealed that there were no specific period of inventory items and background check on vendors, suppliers. 1. 2. There were calls from vendors stating they haven't been paid when records showed payment have been made. 3. There were cases of cash takings not banked. 4. No control over check lodgements and reconciliation of bank account. 5. No background check for those who handled money. 6. The computers in use for transactions did not have protective passwords. 7. No evidence that the organization sent acknowledgements to contributors with record of such acknowledgements kept on file. 8. When new members were admitted, they made yearly subscription. The club did not reissue pre-numbered tickets, which could then be compared to funds deposited. 9. When checks were issued, supporting documents of expenses and approvals at the time of signing checks were not available, and requests for reimbursement were not checked for arithmetical accuracy and reasonableness before approval. The new management of Giant Club has appointed your firm as the external auditor and has been selected as the senior in charge of the audit. Number 1, discuss the activities you carry out when performing the audit of the club, 10 marks. 2, evaluate the key audit areas that you will focus on to get enough audit evidence on this type of audit. 3, determine other factors that should be of concern in this type of audit, and that's 5 marks. So we have a 20-mark question here, ladies and gentlemen. And an NGO question, though, pardon me, I'm maybe a little bit under the weather. It's been very cold out here, and the question tests an NGO or a not-for-profit organization, which is a specialized audit environment, as you can see. And the key challenge lies in the high risk related to the completeness of income, talking about the donations, the fees, the significant internal control failures, typical for smaller entities like we looked at, and the issues around general controls for not-for-profit organizations. So if you look at the solution, actually, it provides a correct framework or frames the audit around the standard phrases of planning, risk assessment, internal control, evidence, and reporting, while emphasizing the need for a highly substantive audit approach due to the unreliable controls we've seen. The solution provided depicts substantive testing approach, yes, as you can see in the evidence section here. Okay, a good way to answer the question, let's look at the examiner's report. So the examiner's report was clear that candidate's performance was less than average, that was below average, and the common pitfall is inability to explain the procedures for the audit of not-for-profit organizations. Okay, let's look at how to answer such questions and speak to what to and how to write such an answer or such answers when presented. Okay, so in answering such questions, we need to understand what to write and the procedures around or the procedures required across the entire audit cycle of a non-profit organization. We will need to focus on the necessary modifications compared to that of a commercial audit or a commercial company's audit. So how do you write, especially for the part A we are seeing? Structure your answer using the 5 main audit phrases or audit phrase as headings. You see the examiner started with planning, risk, internal control, audit evidence, and reporting. So under each phrase, list 2 activities tailored to the giant club. So for example, planning, you need to assess the nature of restricted funds. We talked about that expressly, restricted funds in the lectures. Funds that are provided for specific purposes. So the auditor needs to ensure that those purposes and the funds are channeled for that exclusively. So you need to assess the nature of the restricted funds, then the evidence, confirm will receivable with the estate administrators. That's around the A part of the question. So you'll see that the table, if you can present it under a table, will provide your answers clearly for the examiner so that you'll be able to pick your marks seamlessly. And the B part speaks to audit evidence. Okay, the B part speaks to audit evidence. And in writing, what do we write for the B part? The specific amounts or assertions posing the highest risk based on the treasurer's findings. And you see that the primary focus must be on income completeness and the existence or valuation of unique not-for-profit organizations items. So how do you write that? You need to list the key areas, then briefly explain the risks and the necessary high-level procedure. So try to focus on completeness of income, membership fees, donations, and the valuation and existence of the will receivable and scholarship liability. You need to ensure that. Please read through the answers. And for the C part, what do you write? You need to write around the high-level issues beyond accounts, controls. You need to focus on regulatory, governance, ethical, and overall audit limitations. So how do you write it? List 5 distinct non-financial or regulatory concerns. So, for example, fund restrictions. Some concerns there: fund restrictions, scope limitation, IT risk, compliance with the club's governance structure. It's very important. So read through the answers for the C part so you could get clarity on how to address such a question. Then for the marking guide, the marking guide speaks around the earning of your marks. So don't forget, it's a 20-mark question. So marks are earned by discussing activities under the framework of the 5 core audit phases, from planning to reporting, and with application actually to the club's context. Don't forget that you need to apply it to the club's context. So for the 10 marks question, I think you have 2 marks each for each 5 activities. So around the first one, we talked about planning, or the examiner provided planning. We must define the scope and objectives for this first-time audit, especially since prior audits were non-statutory. We need to obtain a detailed understanding of the club's revenue stream and unique accounting policies. For example, endowment income and will proceeds. We need to understand the procedures around that. Number 2, risk assessment. Second point, we will assess control risks as high. Don't forget, control risks are high, given the numerous control failures the professional accountant listed. Remember, he said unbanked cash, no segregation of duties, unauthorized checks. And consequently, we must set detection risk as low. Since inherent and control risk are high, don't forget, we must also assess the high inherent risk associated with the potential fraud and the subjectivity of donations. Don't forget that in your risk assessment. And for the internal controls, the control assessment, we need to gain an understanding of the control environment and conclude that we cannot rely on them due to their extreme weaknesses. So we will then document these findings for management and prepare to issue a detailed management letter or report to the new treasurer. Then for the fourth parameter or component, audit evidence, talking about substantive procedures, a purely substantive testing approach will be required due to high control risk. So this includes detailed vouching of recorded expenditure and focusing on the completeness assertion of all income sources. So for example, reconciling member lists to cash deposits based on their subscriptions, something like that. And finally, reporting. To end the last 2 marks, we must evaluate whether any material misstatements or the scope limitation on opening balances or cash completeness necessitates a modified opinion. So we must also review the financial or the final financial statements for the appropriate disclosure of restricted funds. Don't forget that restricted funds and material commitments like the scholarship we saw in the case. Okay, so that's for the 10-mark question. You need to write in detail a bit based on what you see the examiner provided, because 10 marks is not easy to come by. Then for the 5 marks question, which is the B part, you need marks will be gained for identifying the area and giving a brief procedure. So the first one is completeness of income, membership fees and donation. The key audit areas to focus on the lack of pre-numbered tickets. Another one is cash not being banked create the highest risk of understatement. We must use analytical procedures, for example, members fee rate, and traced acknowledgement or acknowledged contributions to bank statements in performing this procedure. Secondly, the expenditure completeness, the liability accuracy, talking about vendor payments. The claims that vendors were not paid when record shows payment suggests misappropriation of funds. We need to perform external confirmation, circularization of payables, don't forget, to inspect the supporting documentation for payments. Can vendors say they have not been paid and payments were made? That means somebody has done wuru with the money, something like that. Then for the will receivable, you need to confirm the existence and valuation. You see that will receivable is a balance sheet collection, which is a material event. So we must inspect the actual will documents and obtain direct written confirmation from the estate administrators to confirm the final collectible amount. Then for the scholarship commitments, which are accruals or obligations, the commitment to regular pocket money and medical costs is a long-term liability or accrual. We must review the commitment agreement and ensure the appropriate accounting standard is applied to recognize or disclose the obligation. Then for IT security, which is the 5th one, IT system security, talking about data integrity, the lack of protective passwords and inadequate IT controls puts the club's data integrity at risk. So in doing our audit, we must focus the audit must focus attention on reliability of data inputs for financial reporting and recommend urgent control improvements. So discussing around these 5 points should be able to earn us 5 marks. And for the last one, factors that should be of concern, marks will be awarded for those other factors for 5 distinct, maybe non-procedural high-level points. So like fund restriction compliance. Don't forget, a primary concern is ensuring that funds obtained from endowments or donations are used only for intended or restricted purpose. So for example, scholarship, it's a restricted purpose that was stated in the case that some funds should be used for. And you should not be misapplied for general operating expenses, something like that. We spoke about that extensively in the classes or the lectures. Then for scope limitation risk, you could talk about scope limitation risk as other factors of concern. The extensive control weakness, historical lack of proper records, unrecorded cash takings may prevent the auditors from obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence on opening balances and income, leading to a potential modification of the audit opinion. And you could also thirdly talk about management integrity and the ethical environment. The historical practices like cash not banked, payments recorded but were not paid to vendors suggest a poor tone at the top and heightened fraud risk that necessitates pervasive professional skepticism. So management integrity is another area you should look at. Then regulatory non-compliance. Don't forget NOCLA. We must be concerned about the club's compliance with its registration laws, internal governance, especially since they haven't conducted a statutory audit. Raising the risk of non-compliance with laws and regulations, NOCLA, it's not out of place. Then finally, the fifth mark you could pick is IT security and access control. The lack of protective password on computers present a critical weakness, exposing transaction records to unauthorized alteration or deletion. And this could diminish the reliability of all electronic evidence. So generally, that's how to end the marks for the C part. And looking at the marking guide, could write around that. So general strategies, I would suggest, is applicable to all questions, but then for this question, you need to, yes, please, Grace, go ahead. Your hands are up.
This question is a little bit confusing in the sense that question B and question C, the answer seems to be similar. If we had not seen their answer before now, we would have been tempted to mix up the answers. So I'm trying to devise a means. If I want you to help me, please, if there is a means for me to be able to know what they require in this B part and what, because they are similar. If you look at it, one can mention most of those points under any of this and it will still be fine. It will still be correct answer. So I don't know if there is any other better way to know exactly what because the questions are not specific at all, B and C. I may be wrong, please. I need help.
Okay, good question. Samuel, you were trying to say something. I had Samuel acknowledging and assenting to what Grace was asking. Were you trying to say something?
I was going to talk about that too, but though seeing the way they now answered it, just like she mentioned, if we're not seeing the answer, it's a bit difficult. Even with this answer, by the time we're under exam condition, there's every tendency and possibility we'll start even mixing them up. The areas to get enough of it audit evidence, I think it's just different for me enough. But even at that, is there any way, sir, that you can probably help us the strategy to use in probably distinguishing these two concerns?
Okay, good question. Fantastic question. So don't forget the second and the third part, the B and the third part, you could replicate answers based on what the examiner has provided. So he said, evaluate the key audit areas that you focus on to get enough audit evidence on this type. Then he said, determine other factors that should be of concern. So other factors and enough audit evidence answers could be replicated. That's the strategy. So if you look at the answers, like Grace said, they were almost replicated. Now the prompts said enough evidence, 5 marks, and other areas. So there are 2 different questions, but answers would be channeled in the same questions, both of them, to provide clarity. So, like saying
sir.
that, yes, please. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay, so looking at it, what my conclusion was is for the
Yeah.
B part, their answers I notice are something you are certain of.
Exactly.
Then for the C part, it could be they are under probability. There are areas probably under. That's just my what I concluded on.
Yes,
for now.
I agree with your thoughts. agree with your thoughts on that. So you are certain of this enough evidence to include. Then for the C part, there could be areas, but please don't forget you are not trying to bring areas outside the case. Any areas that could be must be in the case. Don't forget it should be in the case. Those areas of concern in the case. So they could be risk that will crystallize or risk that have not crystallized. Any subjective or objective predications you provide, it's fine. They said other factors that should be of concern and that could be. So you could provide that. But don't forget, you replicate the answers, like Grace said, in the B part and the C part. Depending on how you provide them, please do under exam condition. Just be mark conscious. There are 5 marks each. And ensure that the B part you should provide 5 good points. If you could differentiate them under the C part, it's fine. And that is why practice and reading these answers are very essential. So as you are reading the study text or the slides, please go through the answers meticulously and compare them with what is in the slide. This is the first question we are testing on NFPOs. So look at how to answer them. Most of these principles were stated in the lectures and also in the slides. So just look at how to answer them. And general strategy is, please, you could replicate both answers for B and C because it's not clear, like Grace said, and I agree. So key areas is focus on the enough audit evidence and also what is the concern in this type of audit. So both answers could be replicated in different ways. So take note of that. And it's a good note both of us pointed out in the question. So like I was saying, general strategies is that in this kind of question, the conceptual application is key. So always ground your answers in the specific facts. The names, the industry provided in the scenario. It's applicable to all questions. So simply quoting ISA definitions is not enough. If it's ISA, there's no ISA on this. But you must explain how the ISA applies to the client, like the lack of segregation of duties in giant club increases control risk. So something like that is conceptual application. Then the ISA citation, if you remember, could be appropriate. And also your professional terminologies in using areas like sufficient appropriate evidence, risk of material misstatement, completeness assertions, statement like that should be injected into your answers. So where applicable, if you could remember, please cite international standards that could resonate with you. ISA 315, understanding the control environment, ISA 57, any ISA that comes to your mind as you're answering, please provide it. You see, you impress the examiner when you do that. Then try to structure your presentation. Use clear labeled headings, A, B, C to state your answers, numbered paragraphs. Avoid dense prosing. Dense prosing means sporadic answers without direction. So please structure your points logically. For example, when discussing risk, follow the formula: risk, fact, risk, assertion, affects, audit procedure, something like that. Then adopt the auditor's mindset. Your responses must reflect the professional perceptive or perception of an auditor, focusing on evidence, risk assessment, internal controls, materiality, reporting consequences, for example, modified opinions, key audit matters. So adopt an auditor's mindset in answering this question. Then focus on the verbs. Pay close attention to action verbs in the prompt. We've said that severally in different classes. Discuss and evaluate talks about analysis, professional reasoning, contrasting viewpoints. Identify list talks about it requires direct, concise enumeration of points. Then when you hear explain, determine, this requires giving the rationale or providing a conclusion based on facts, something like that. So those are general strategies that will resonate with such a question and other questions in answering them. So please practice with this. No matter how you I know we have a lot of volume of stuff, but please try to practice with this very, very importantly as we go ahead with our studies so that we can solidify our understanding and technique on how to answer such questions. So good questions from both of us. Nice engagement. All right. So let's run. If we don't have any other questions on that, let's run to the next question, which was November 2022, question 7. D&D Limited. Somebody's hands up. Okay. Bosse, these hands are up. Yeah. Bosse, please go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Josiah.
Good evening. It's nice to have you.
Yeah, good evening. Like, I've been joining the class, just that I'm always almost because I'm always in between some other things. Yes, so thank you so much, because I've been following your class. Even at times when I don't join, I still go back to watch on YouTube. Yeah, so my question now is, you just explain some things now, that when they tell you to evaluate and identify, what does it mean? And when they tell you to list, oh, this is what they mean. Is it possible you just help us to do a short note regarding that? Okay, whenever we see evaluate and identify, this is what they are trying to say. Whenever you see list and this is what they are trying to say. Is it possible for you to just help us to drop it on the group chat so we can always go back to check?
Sure. I can do that. So I'll just provide some verbs and some prompts that the examiner frequents on his questions. So, and what it means clearly for you to use. It's fine. Good request.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks for that engagement. Good request. Okay. So let's look at November 2022 and question 7, the D&D Limited tested materiality, a full materiality question. The question reads, the audit plan and scope was presented to the audit committee of the D&D Limited for the year ended December 31st, 2020. The external auditors of the company stated, we would estimate materiality using profit before tax for the full year. Okay. We would estimate our preliminary materiality based on expected results for the full year. We will perform a materiality reassessment at year end to confirm adequacy or otherwise of our preliminary materiality. We will report to the audit committee on all unadjusted misstatements greater than our established threshold unless they are qualitatively immaterial. Your uncle who is a member of the audit committee discussed with you and requested that you explain further on the issue. Number 1, or required, A, explain the concepts of materiality and performance materiality in an audit of financial statements, 3 marks. B, explain the benchmark for determining materiality, and that's 5 marks. C, discuss the factors that may affect the identification of an appropriate benchmark, 7 marks. Total 15 marks. All right. Full materiality question. I love this question. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have a full question on materiality, which is the focus of the planning stage. And the question is a fundamental test of materiality. And don't forget, at this stage, you should have gurgitated materiality ISA 320. It's a core planning concept, and it covers the definition of both overall and performance materiality, and also the criteria for selecting benchmark. For example, profit before tax, revenue, profit after tax. We looked at that in the classes. And the qualitative factors that affect the ultimate judgment. So, the prompt is to explain. A, B is to explain, and C is to discuss. Okay, almost the same prompt. Explanation means also to discuss. Okay. Looking at the solution, you will see that it's comprehensive and accurately defines the terms and provides both quantitative thresholds, that is 1 to 10% range, and qualitative factors, that is, for example, converting profit to loss. So, what did the examiner note? Okay, so this is where the revenue was. Okay, we'll come back to the answer. Okay, so let's look at the below average. You see that the examiner noted poor explanation of materiality at various stages, indicating the need for distinguished clarity between planning stage and performance stage materiality. So take note of it. Please take note of this examiner's report. And as you are reading, don't forget, we have the question and answers per chapters. Please, as you're reading, don't expound the past questions. Don't just read sporadically, except you want to read for fun. Maybe you're on a bus or something, but you still have your phones. So please read with the slides or the past question or the study text. I don't think at this stage you should be doing study text now. You should be reading with the slides. So read with the slides and the past questions. Please play around them, because the past questions will enforce your application and applicability of the concepts practically. So as you are practicing, do that with the past questions, since we have them aligned to each chapter. Okay, so having seen that, what do we write and how do we write it? Let's go back to the answers now. I haven't seen it was below performance stage or below performance. What do we write and how do we write it? So for the A part, materiality concept, tested materiality concept, what to write, we need to clearly define materiality first based on what we are seeing on the screen. And materiality is based on the influence on the user's decision as defined by ISA 320. Then also define performance materiality, which is a lower figure used to reduce the probability that the aggregate of uncorrected misstatements exceed the overall materiality. So that's performance materiality. A lower figure used to reduce the probability that the aggregate of uncorrected misstatements exceeds overall materiality. So how do you write that? Proceed with a distinct, concise definition for each concept, as you see the examiner provided, and ensure you emphasize the performance materiality is set lower. Don't forget, performance materiality is set lower than overall materiality to account for undetected misstatements. So that's how to write the A part. Go through the answer, and it's short for a 5 marks. I think it's 5. Okay, 3 marks. Yeah, it's short for a 3-mark question. Then the B part talks about the benchmark for determining materiality. So what do you write? Explain that the benchmark is the financial base, and the financial base could be profit before tax, revenue, profit after tax, to which a percentage is applied to calculate overall materiality. Then list several examples of appropriate benchmarks and provide the typical percentage range used in practice. We've looked at that. So if you see revenue 1 to 2%, pre-tax profit 5 to 10%, total asset 1 to 2%. So just provide examples in this area. And how do you write that? Start by defining the benchmark as the reference point. The benchmark is the reference point chosen using professional judgment. So list at least 3 specific examples. So for example, profit before tax, total revenue, net assets. Then conclude by citing the common professional percentage ranges. For example, 5 to 10% of profit before tax. Something like that should suffice in your answer. So that should earn you the 5 marks for the B part. And for the C part, the factors, how do you write this now, or what do you write? You need to discuss the qualitative and quantitative factors. Don't forget, we spoke about that extensively in the classes. The qualitative and quantitative factors that guide the auditor's selection of the most appropriate base figure. So focus on characteristics like stability, the user focus, and the entity's nature. So those 3 areas should be your focus. Then how do you write that? You need to discuss at least 3 factors. Ensure you explain why each factor is important. Key factors include the volatility of the benchmark. For example, volatile profit before tax may necessitate using revenue. Then the user's focus. An example is the investor's focus on profit before tax and the creditors on assets. So the user's focus is important to take note of. Then the nature of the entity is the 3rd parameter, or the 3rd area. The nature talks about, for example, not-for-profit organizations use total expenses or revenue. So the nature of the entity, whether not-for-profit or for-profit organization, could either determine whether you use total expenses or revenue. So it's good to understand based on the marking key. If you look at the marking key now, you see that the specific guidance for question 7 based on the marking key, A, materiality and performance materiality, we have 3 marks. Then in talking about materiality for 3 marks, materiality in explaining materiality, the overall materiality, you need to explain it that overall materiality is that information, or information is material if its omission or misstatement could influence the economic decision of users taken on the basis of the financial statement. So just reflect ISA 320. Picking the second point, materiality at planning stage. You need to state that this is the initial maximum threshold for misstatements that is determined at the planning stage for the financial statements as a whole. And to pick the third mark for the A part, performance materiality, you need to explain that is an amount set lower than overall materiality to reduce to an appropriately low level the probability that the aggregate of uncorrected or undetected misstatements exceed overall materiality. And for the 5 marks in the B part, you need to talk around the definition of a benchmark. Explain that the benchmark is essentially a financial base, such as a category of reported income or equity to which the auditor applies a percentage to determine overall materiality. Then benchmark examples, any 3 for 3 marks, you need to list examples like we've seen that serve the base. Profit before tax is common for profit-oriented entities. And total revenue is used for volatile profit before tax or service entities. And total assets or net asset value is used for asset-heavy or not-for-profit entities. So the benchmark, these examples I stated, you don't need to state it in your write-up. So you just provide benchmark examples based on percentages and you leave it. Then for the third, the 2 marks you earn for threshold ranges, provide typical ranges used in practice for calculation. So generally, profit before tax is often 5 to 10%. Total revenue is often half to 2%, something like that. And total asset is often 1 to 2%. So just give examples and ranges. And for the C part, marking guide, okay. The marking guide awards for stating and discussing factors that influence the choice of benchmark. So, for example, profit before tax versus revenue. So, I think the first one around that is users' information needs or focus is the factors. It's a factor. The benchmark should reflect the users' information needs or focus should reflect the financial elements that the users of the financial statements primarily focus on. So, for instance, shareholders often focus on profit before tax, while creditors may focus on total assets or equity. So, the user's need is very important. Then, the nature and industry of the entity. Entities with high volatile profits, like this company we just assessed, may require reassessments. For loss-making entities should use a more stable base, such as total revenue or total assets or profit before tax would be misleading or zero. So, it's important the nature of the industry should be taken into cognizance. And for the entity structure and ownership, for not-for-profit organizations or entities, focus on capital structure. Benchmarks like total expenses or total equity may be more relevant than profit benchmarks. So NFPOs, you need to focus on capital structure. Then for stability of the benchmark, you need to provide a stable and reasonable predictable benchmark. If a key benchmark like profit before tax has been volatile or is expected to be very low, the auditor should switch to a more consistent measure like total revenue to ensure consistent planning. Also, another factor is relevance of current operations. The benchmark should relate to continuing operations. So, for example, profit from discontinued operations should be excluded from that benchmark, or the benchmark should be chosen from a category that represents the entire core activities, not or non-core activities. And finally, I think qualitative factors. The benchmark must select with an understanding. We must select factors. We must select the benchmark based on our understanding that certain misstatements, even if quantitative or quantitatively material to the benchmark, may be qualitative materials or qualitatively material to that entity. So, for example, areas affecting compliance, directors' bonuses, or converting a reported profit to loss, something like that, areas like that are qualitative factors that needs to be taken note of. Okay, so having looked at that, don't forget general strategies around your conceptual application of the answer. Make sure your professional terminologies are used. Structure your presentation clearly, please. Labeled headings like you see the examiner did in this presentation. As you are practicing, don't forget to ensure that this clear structure is king. Don't forget discussing the questions, and ensure you provide reasonable and elaborated answers, not just listing of terms, because he said explain, discuss, don't list, please. Then adopt the auditor's mindset, like I said, and focus on those verbs like where the request was said we should. So those are general strategies on answering such questions. Okay, it's already 6 p.m. now, please. Can we look at this last question before we shut down? We should stop here, because we've not looked at any question on computer-assisted audit techniques, which is part of the structure. Can we look at this? There are more questions, but then we just have one class to treat per question. Or we should stop here since we have another class by 7. What's our resolve? Should we look at this question briefly?
Let's
decide.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we should look at it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes, sir.
Okay. So let's look at this question, please. And this will be the last. And we've not treated any computer code of the planning stage. So let's look at this, and it won't be long. Maybe 10 minutes, we are done. Okay, so it was tested November 2021, and it was on computer-assisted audit techniques. Question 3 reads, the availability of computer-assisted audit techniques should be considered by the auditor when planning the nature, extent, and timing of tests in an audit. Hence, the auditor must determine his testing strategies, which will depend on his decision of either using a manual testing method or computer-assisted techniques at computer-assisted audit techniques method to avoid loss of audit trail. Required. Discuss 5 solutions to loss of audit trail, 5 marks. Number 2, evaluate the merits and demerits of the application of computer-assisted audit techniques, 7 marks. B, you've been appointed as the auditor of a company that processes its accounting functions using a computer system. You've decided to use computer-assisted techniques to generate necessary audit evidence for these engagements. Required. Discuss the activities members of the audit team will perform with their computers in the client's office, 4 marks. Excuse me. Number 2, analyze 2 types of audit software in use in computer-based information systems, 4 marks. So 20 marks. All right. I'm glad all the questions we are testing covered everything we spoke about generally. So you see that the question tests a key technical area in this planning chapter, the use of CATs in a high technology audit environment. And that speaks to ISA 330. But if you don't remember the ISA, no issues. But if you remember the ISA is good, you state it, it will be part of impressing the examiner that this person knows and has already memorized these areas. But it's not a guarantee, but it's good to add it to. So ISA 330, it's good you apply. So if you can remember, it's fine. If you don't, it's also fine. You see that this question is structured to test both the conceptual understanding around audit trail, computer-assisted audit techniques, the merits and demerits, and the practical application of the auditor's activities in a client's IT office, the types of software, and that was actually tested elaborately in the question. So let's see what the examiner said. Okay, so performance was poor. Wow. So please take note. Performance was poor. The question tests. And what was the challenge? Majority of candidates. Okay, so this is the challenge now, because the knowledge of practical use of computers in audit functions was the challenge. The type of audit software indicates candidates struggle with the practical and technical aspects of a computerized audit. So please take note of this. Okay. Candidates struggled with that. All right. So for the part A, what to write and how do we write? What to write. So solutions that either preserve or recreate the evidence necessary to trace a transaction from initiation to reporting, and also compensating for the lack of visible paper documents is what to write. So how do you write it? List 5 distinct practical solutions focused on both IT controls. For example, restricting access, is an IT control. Backup data is an IT control. And also audit techniques. For example, using computer-assisted audit techniques like test data and performing alternative procedures are what you should write in these answers, as you've seen the examiner provided. So that's the A1 part, talking about the audit trail solutions. So we said solutions that either preserve or recreate the evidence necessary to trace a transaction is what audit trail is all about. So from initiation to reporting, compensating for the lack of visible paper documents is what it's all about. And you need to write the 5 distinct, just like it's provided. Then for the B or the A2 part, talking about the computer-assisted audit evaluation. The first one is the solution to the loss of audit trail. Then the second one is the merits and demerits. So it's a double bulleted question. So please stratify them very clearly for the examiner to mark you. So for the A2 part, the computer-assisted audit evaluation, what to write. A balanced discussion on the pros, which is merits, and the cons, which is the merits of using computer-assisted audit techniques. The merits should focus on efficiency, coverage, test reliability. That's what you should write around. And the demerit should focus on cost, complexity, and resource requirements. So how do you write that? Please use clear subheadings for merits and demerits. State it clearly. Ensure you elaborate beyond the simple list. So for example, explain that testing a large number of transactions reduce detection risk, something like that. So there should be explanations to what you are providing. So please read through the answer. Then for the B part, the activities with computers is what we are asked of. So what do you write around that? The non-computer-assisted audit techniques, administrative and analytical tasks on an audit team performs using their own laptops on the client side. We spoke about that in the lecture, is what to write. And how do you write it? You need to list 4 practical activities focusing on audit management, for example, the work program, analysis, for example, analytical procedures, and also documentation. Digital working papers are what you should write around this. So the solution is clear. And for the second part, the types of audit software. So what do you write around this? A clear analysis or definition and purpose of 2 major categories of audit software used to extract and analyze client data. How do you write that? Name the 2 types. We have generalized audit software, then we have embedded audit models or customized programs. So define each and explain what they are used for in the context of gathering audit evidence. So that's it. If you look at the solution, it's clear, and try to read around how to answer. Any question that is tested will just be around this kind of answers and questions, even if it's rephrased or the case study is elaborated. So looking at the marking key now, you see there's a specific guidance for the marking key. And for the first part, 5 marks. So try to provide solutions around application of computer-assisted audit techniques, then briefly explain it. Then the external backup or storage should be explained to earn the 5 marks. Production of hard copy evidence, hard copies of key documents, where you should center your thoughts around. Restriction of access and change control, alternative audit procedures. Those are the points you should speak to earn the first 5 marks. For the second or the A2 part, 3 merits and 4 demerits should suffice to get you 7 marks. So that's what the examiner has provided. 3 merits and 2. 3 merits and 4 demerits. So the merit should be around increased efficiency and scope. Then another merit is enhanced reliability and reduce risks. Then consistency and accuracy should be around the merits. Yes, please, Grace, go ahead.
Sir, please, these types of audit software, what other way can they ask it that we will now assume the answer to be this Gantt chart, enabling AI, all those things used to teach us? I thought that's what I was expecting here, but I don't know. What's the difference? How do I know which to answer for this and
Okay,
which to answer for this one that they put
for
here?
that. Okay. So audit software are general. We have two types. We have the general, then we have the specific. General are talking about general softwares like IDEA, ACL. So any software that you can buy off the shelf. Then we have specific, which are customized. The one they are developed for your company or your needs particularly. So generally, when all these softwares are so you just remember and customized. So there's the general one you could get that could align to your needs. Then there's specific for your own company. So just those two types, general and specific or customized, should come to your mind. You could state example, maybe IDEA, ACL, any all the software you know of. So those are generally the way he could frame it. He'll just ask you, but just know that there are two types of all the software, the general ones and the specific or tailored ones to your organization. Yeah, so he won't ask it. You just maybe bring it in a case. You just determine which one the organization is using, if it's a general one or a specific one that was customized for that organization. That's generally how it will come. So I think you mentioned something. You said, what example you gave again? Can you come again on that?
Those
So that I'll
Gantt
tell you.
charts, enabling AI, all those things, are they not also, are they
No,
general or customized?
Okay, no, those are tools. Those are not softwares, actually. Those are tools you use. They are computer assisted. They help you. They assist you. Yes, they are not softwares.
Okay, they are not softwares.
Yes. You could categorize them as audit tools.
Okay.
Yes, they are audit tools. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you're welcome. So good questions. Good question. So we said the merits speak to increase efficiency, don't forget, enhance reliability and reduce risk. Then we and accuracy as merits. These are high initial cost and maintenance, subscriptions and all those things. Training and expertise requirements, client system access and compatibility. Those are the visual audit trail. Those are the challenges. Then for the B part, we have 4 marks. Is performed by the audit team members. And general activities looks at audit administration and paper preparation and review, audit activities that the audit team will use with the computers. Then analytical procedures, you could quote the ISA 520 if you remember, then sampling, selection, and all that. Then for the B part or B2 part, we have 2 types of software. Don't forget, like Grace asked, we have the general audit softwares, interrogation programs, written multi-purpose programs like IDEA, ACL, like I said. Then the second one is the embedded audit modules, which are customized. There are softwares around inserting permanent audit routines and code specifically for that client. And you can also state the alternative to audit embedded modules like customized audit programs could earn you those marks. So don't forget the general strategies are to apply the concept to forget that, then try professional terminology, computer assisted audit techniques, generalized embedded models, all those terms. And ISA 330 talks about the auditor's response to assess risk, which governs testing strategy of all the softwares. You could employ that in your answer. Then don't forget structure is king. So structure your presentation using clear labels, headers, and all that. Then don't forget to adopt the auditor's mindset and focus on the verbs that the examiner is using to ask his questions. Okay, so let's stop here.